Our mission today is to explore how our modern assumptions can just completely blind us to the true historical meaning of ancient texts.
And we're going to use one very specific, highly recognizable word as our ultimate test case.
And I'll just tease this right now. By the end of this deep dive, you're going to completely rethink one of the most common concepts in Western history. You realize it originally had absolutely nothing to do with religion.
Not a single thing, which is just wild to think about.
It is, but before we even get to that specific word, we have to talk about the trap of how we read texts. The slide deck has this great diagnostic table.
Yeah, the concepts of exegesis versus eisegesis. This is foundational stuff if you want to understand history.
Okay, so break those down for us. What is the difference?
Well, exegesis basically means drawing the meaning out of a text. You study the historical context, the culture, and you submit to what the text actually says.
Even if it's uncomfortable.
Right, especially if it uncovers truths that challenge your own worldview. You're pulling the author's original intent out.
Okay, and the other one, eisegesis.
Eisegesis is the exact opposite. It's reading your own preconceived ideas into a text.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you start with your modern perspective, and you try to force the ancient document to agree with you. It leads to this thing called proof texting.
Proof texting. That's like when people just cherry pick isolated quotes to validate whatever they already believe.
Yeah, exactly. You ignore the context and just find a sentence that sounds like it supports your agenda.
Okay, let's unpack this with an analogy because I think this is so crucial. Eisegesis is basically like reading a science fiction novel from the 1800s, seeing the word ship, and assuming the author means a nuclear submarine.
That is a perfect way to look at it.
Because you're projecting your present reality completely onto the past. You're smuggling a nuclear submarine into the 1800s.
You are. And the sources give a really stark example of this using a famous ancient text, Matthew 18:17.
To tell it to the church passage.
Right. The English translation says tell it to the church. Now think about how modern readers process that.
Okay.
When a Protestant reads that, they instantly picture going to a local pastor in a modern church building.
Right, that makes sense for their context.
But an Orthodox reader looks at the exact same text and pictures taking the issue to a synod of priests.
Oh, interesting.
And a Catholic reader sees it and conceptualizes the Pope or the Vatican hierarchy.
So 3 different people read the exact same word,
Yeah.
and their brains build 3 completely different modern institutions.
Exactly.
Right.
Because they are reading their present reality into the text. But here is the massive historical question we have to ask.
Did the original author actually have any of those modern structures in mind?
Precisely. Did Protestant pastors or Orthodox synods or the Vatican even exist when that document was written?
I'm going to guess no.
A definitive no. None of those structures existed. So we are looking at pure eisegesis.
Okay, so building on the danger of reading our modern ideas into ancient texts, let's shift to the actual word that gets translated as church in that passage.
The Greek word ekklesia.
Ekklesia. So if we use exegesis, if we actually draw the meaning out of the historical context, what did this word mean to a first-century person?
Let's start with the etymology from the slides. The word breaks down into 2 Greek parts. Ek, which means out of,
Okay.
and kaleo, which means to call. So together, it literally translates to the called out ones.
See, here's where it gets really interesting to me. Because called out sounds incredibly spiritual to a modern ear.
Right, it sounds very religious.
Yeah. Was this a religious gathering? Like a wholly specialized group pulled away from the secular world?
Not at all. And this is where we have to aggressively correct our modern assumptions. Ecclesia was a strict secular designation.
Wait, really? Strictly secular?
Yes. It had over 500 years of established history in Greco-Roman city-states like Athens and Ephesus.
So what was it, if not a religious service?
It was a functional branch of the government. It was the official democratic assembly of the citizens.
Oh, wow. So it wasn't a casual hangout or a spiritual retreat.
No, it was the town hall. It was the parliament of the city.
That is a massive paradigm shift.
Yeah.
So how did this ancient Greek parliament actually function in daily life?
The mechanics are actually fascinating. It really brings that called-out etymology to life.
Paint a picture for us.
So when the city needed to handle state business, a city herald, called a carex, would be sent out.
Okay.
He would go down into the agora, the bustling marketplace where everyone is working and shopping, and he would literally blow a horn or shout a formal summons.
Just right there in the middle of the market.
Right there. He was literally calling the citizens out of their private homes and businesses and directing them into the public square.
And the people who responded to that horn, they became the Ekklesia.
Exactly. Those who assembled were the Ekklesia.
So it's almost like an emergency Amber Alert on your phone, combined with a jury duty summons.
I love that comparison.
But instead of just getting a notification, you're being called out of your living room to literally run the city's government for the afternoon.
That is exactly what it was. But
Yeah.
we do need to clarify who was actually getting this Amber Alert.
Right, who made up this parliament?
It was a gathering of ordinary citizens, but in that historical context, that specifically meant full citizens, usually free men who had completed their military training.
So not an inclusive modern democracy by any means.
No, very stratified. But the key takeaway is that it did not refer to appointed officials or kings or a small council of elites. It was the broader citizenry.
Okay, so these citizens hear the horn, they drop what they're doing, and they gather. Where are they going?
They gathered in massive open-air venues. In Athens, they used a dedicated space called the Phoenix. In other cities, they used the great stone theaters.
Then what are they doing once they get there?
They are conducting the heavy lifting of city business. They are voting on laws, electing magistrates, declaring war, determining taxes.
Wow.
And crucially, this gathering was defined by freedom of speech and equal voting rights. Any citizen could step up and address the assembly.
So it's loud, it's participatory, people are arguing over taxes and wars.
Yes, it was dynamic and deeply political.
That completely shatters the image of sitting quietly in a pew while one person speaks down to an audience.
It is the absolute opposite of that.
Okay, so with this strict secular and political definition established, this completely shifts our understanding when we see the word ecclesia in ancient texts.
It really does. The sources brought up a couple of amazing textual examples to prove just how secular this word was.
But the other example in the sources, the one from Acts 19, that one just blew my mind.
Oh, the riot in Ephesus. This is the ultimate proof.
Yes, talk about this because this is wild.
So in Acts 19, there is an angry, confused, violent riot in the city of Ephesus. Thousands of people rush into theater screaming over each other. Pure chaos.
Pure mob rule.
Exactly. And the ancient text repeatedly calls this furious, secular, rioting mob the Ekklesia.
Wait, the exact same word we translate as church today is used to describe a violent street riot.
Yes, because they had rushed into the theater, the normal place for the civic assembly, the text literally says the Ekklesia was in confusion.
That is so jarring to think about. If you use eisegesis there, you'd have to picture a violent, screaming church service.
Which is ridiculous, but with exegesis, it makes perfect sense. It was a chaotic political assembly. In fact, a town clerk eventually gets up to calm the mob down.
Because he's terrified the Romans are going to punish the city for an illegal uprising.
Right. And he tells them, if you have issues, take it to the courts. But any other matters must be settled in a lawful ecclesia.
A lawful ecclesia, not a riot.
Exactly. And then the text literally says, after he said this, he dismissed the ecclesia.
He dismissed the church. A local government clerk told the church to go home so they wouldn't get arrested for rioting.
It is entirely secular and political. Ecclesia is a legal term.
So, synthesizing all of this,
Yeah.
what does this actually mean for us today? Why does it matter to you listening to this right now?
I think the core aha moment from the sources is that ecclesia never refers to an organization, it never refers to a building, and it never refers to a hierarchy.
It always refers to the people.
Always the assembled citizens.